The day I moved in with my husband, his mom handed me a paper and said, "This is how you'll run the house, just like I do." My husband agreed and told me to follow it. I smiled, gave him a paper of my own, and after reading it, he suddenly begged me not to leave. I married Brian, not his real name, 6 months ago. We met in college in Austin, Texas. He was sweet, kind, and always talked about how close he was to his mom, Anita. I thought it was cute. My own mom passed away when I was a teenager, so seeing him call his mom every night made me feel like he came from a loving home. I thought Anita could become like a mom to me, too. Our wedding was small and simple, held in the Texas Hill Country, just close friends, some wine, and dancing under string lights. We planned to live with Brian's parents for a while to save money since rent in San Antonio was too high. It seemed like a smart choice. But the moment we arrived at his parents' house, something felt off. Anita was standing outside with a paper in her hands. No smile, no hug, not even a welcome home. She just said, "Here, this is how you'll run the house, just like I do." The paper was a laminated, color-coded schedule. I laughed at first. I thought it was a joke or maybe a strange family tradition. But Brian stood next to her and said seriously, "She's right. Follow it exactly." No smile, he meant it. That's when something clicked in me. This wasn't a simple list of chores. It was a strict, hour-by-hour schedule of how to run her house, not ours. Weekdays included things like wake up at 5:30 a.m., laundry by 5:45, cook a hot breakfast, no cereal, serve Anita her coffee at 7 a.m., clean all bathrooms by 7:30, plan groceries, vacuum, mop, bake something sweet by 2 p.m., prepare lunch, no leftovers, iron clothes even if not needed, fold laundry, but only mine and Brian's, not hers, start dinner at 4:30, serve it at 6 o'clock, clean up, then ask for permission to have free time. Weekends, deep cleaning, spa setups, even foot massages for Anita. I looked at Brian and asked, "You're not serious, right?" He said, "You're part of the family now. We all have roles. This is yours." I must have made a face because Anita jumped in and said, "If this is going to be a problem, maybe you should go back to your mother's." Brian didn't say anything. He just moved closer to her. He didn't defend me at all. That's when I knew I was on my own in that house. I smiled and said, "Sure, I'll take it seriously." They put me in the guest room, not the master bedroom. They said we'd get that room after I proved myself as a wife, like I was earning a promotion. That night, I stayed up staring at the ceiling and made a plan. At 3 a.m., I typed up a new schedule on my laptop. I called it Exit Plan. Day 1, go along with everything. Let them think they're in charge. Day 2, start saving proof, screenshots, recordings, anything I can. Day 3, pack only the essentials. Day 4, talk to a lawyer. Day 5, mail the schedule to Brian and Anita with a note, "Thanks for the experience." I printed it, folded it, and hid it in my suitcase. Then I followed the routine, got up early, made breakfast, served Anita her coffee in her glass mug, just the way she liked it. Brian left for work without even looking at me. Anita followed me around all morning, correcting everything, vacuumed the curtains too. Brian likes his shirts stacked vertically. "Did you check the fridge temperature?" I stayed quiet. By 2 p.m., I started recording audio on my phone. I caught her saying, "You'll never run this house like I do, but if you try hard enough, maybe Brian won't leave you like his last girlfriend." Wait, what? That night, after she went to bed, I used the downstairs computer. On the desk was a printed email from Anita. I got curious and opened one titled about Brian's last engagement. I found out Brian had been engaged before. It ended just 2 months after the girl moved in with Anita. The email mentioned things like no boundaries, emotional stress, and even a breakdown. The girl had accused Anita of being manipulative and controlling, and Brian took his mom's side. Sound familiar? I woke up at 5:30 a.m., got dressed, and left a short note on the fridge. "I'm stepping out for a few errands. Be back soon." But I never went back. I had already packed my suitcase and left it in the car the night before. I drove straight to a hotel, called my cousin in Houston, she's a lawyer, and sent her everything, the schedule, the recordings, the texts. She called me 30 minutes later and said, "You need to get out completely. You've got enough to walk away. Let's do this right." That night, I texted Brian. I left a new schedule on the table. "Read it." He read it. Then he called me crying. I didn't answer. I wanted to. I wanted to believe he finally understood what he'd done, but instead, I sent him one last message. Email me when you're ready to speak like a grown man. Until then, I need space. Then I blocked his number. I stayed at a Holiday Inn near the airport. It wasn't fancy, but I just needed a place to breathe. 2 days passed. I heard nothing. Then one morning, I opened the door to get my food delivery, and Anita was standing right there. She was holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil. Her face looked calm, too calm. She said, "I figured you'd be here. Brian's worried. He hasn't eaten in days." I froze. "How did you find me?" I asked. She smiled and said, "I always keep track of my family." She tried to hand me the casserole, but I didn't take it. Then she gave me an envelope. Inside was a printed Bible verse. "Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord." Ephesians 5 verse 22. Under it, she had written, "This household follows God's word. Please reflect." She had underlined it, signed it, and dated it like it was a contract. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Then I said, "Ma'am, if submission means being your unpaid maid, you can keep this." I handed the paper back, gently closed the door, and locked it. Later, Brian emailed me a long message. He said things like, "I didn't know it was that bad. My mom was just trying to help you fit in. And worst of all, I just thought you'd be more traditional, like we talked about before." I replied with one sentence, "Your version of traditional looks a lot like slavery." He didn't respond. Meanwhile, my cousin Rachel was helping me file for an annulment, but then something wild happened. I got a letter in the mail, from a lawyer. Anita was trying to sue me. Her reason? She said I caused her emotional stress by leaving and abandoning my family duties. I showed the letter to Rachel. She nearly spit out her coffee. "Wait, she's suing you for not being her maid?" "Basically," I said. Rachel called the lawyer listed on the letter. He sounded embarrassed. He said Anita insisted on filing it, but there was no real case. "It won't hold up in court," he said. "Honestly, she's just venting." Then he accidentally let something slip. He said, "She's done this before, with the last girl. We didn't file that one either." The last girl, Brian's ex-fiancée. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just dealing with a toxic family, I was part of a repeating pattern. I became obsessed with finding the last woman. I searched Reddit, Facebook, even reached out to old college acquaintances, and eventually, I found her. Let's call her Sarah. We met for coffee in a quiet little cafe in downtown San Antonio. She had kind eyes and a soft voice. When I told her my story, she leaned back and slowly nodded. "I was engaged to Brian for 6 months," she said. "It ended because of his mother." She showed me a scar on her hand from when she burned herself cleaning their oven. "Anita made me redo it twice because I used the wrong sponge," she said. "Brian watched it happen and told me, 'You should have followed her instructions.'" I asked her why she stayed so long. She looked down and said, "Because I thought it was my fault. I thought if I just tried harder, they'd stop." Before I left, Sarah told me something. I wasn't ready for what Sarah told me next. She said Anita used to warn Brian that if he ever chose a woman over her, she'd cut him off, take him out of the will, stop paying his loans. I blinked. "Loans?" Sarah nodded. "Brian's been living off his mom for years. His car, it's in her name. His student loans, she pays them. Even his phone, still on her family plan. He never told me any of that." Later, I sat in my hotel room, just staring at the ceiling. This wasn't just about doing chores or following a schedule. I had married someone who was still a child, emotionally, financially, even spiritually. And his mother? She wasn't letting go. She wasn't just controlling him, she owned him. That's when I realized I could never win. Not because I wasn't enough, but because the whole thing was rigged from the beginning. Brian wasn't just clueless, he was trapped. And no, that doesn't excuse him. He's a grown man. He could have stood up. He could have chosen me. But he didn't. Anita had built a world where he had no spine, no power, and no freedom. And Brian accepted it, because it was easy. But things were about to get worse. While my cousin Rachel was helping with the annulment, she asked for my recent bank statements. She paused and said, "Did you send $2,500 to something called Household Reserve Fund?" I blinked. "What? No." She turned the laptop toward me. There it was, 3 payments between $800 to $900 each. The money went to a joint account with Brian and Anita. I felt sick. He was using our joint bank account to send money to his mom, without telling me. I had a feeling he still had access to the account, but I never thought he'd actually do something like that. I checked the rest of the account history. It got worse. He used our debit card, twice, for groceries at Anita's house. One time, he spent almost $300 at Whole Foods. I emailed him with screenshots. I kept it calm. Using our joint account without my permission is theft. I'm shutting it down by tonight. You have 24 hours to respond. He replied 15 minutes later. It wasn't theft. I needed help keeping the house running. You left. What was I supposed to do? No, I'm sorry. No, I should have protected you. You left. I thought that was the end. But Anita had one more move. I got an email invitation to a family reconciliation dinner. Subject line: let's bring peace to our home. Private room, country club, formal attire, 7 p.m. I stared at it for 5 minutes. It felt like a joke. Rachel looked over and said, "Let's go." I blinked. Why? She smiled. You want proof? Let them give it to you themselves. I wore black, simple makeup, hair tied back. Rachel sat a few tables away, pretending to be a random guest. Her phone was recording. I had a recorder hidden in my bag. The room was just what I expected: white tablecloths, candles, and Anita smiling like she owned the world. Brian was already there, wearing a suit I knew he couldn't afford. He didn't look at me with love, just that same blank stare. Anita stood up when I walked in, kissed me on the cheek, and told the waiter to pour champagne. Then she said, "I just want to apologize for any misunderstandings. I know it's hard for a woman like you, independent, raised without a mother, to join a traditional family." I almost laughed. Halfway through the meal, while I pushed dry chicken around my plate, Anita said, "This has been hard, but there's something we'd like to share with you." I raised an eyebrow. Brian reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He slid it across the table. I opened it. It was a post-nuptial agreement. Not a draft, a real, notarized contract. Already signed by Brian. It had rules about marital duties, money owed to the family, and said Anita would always be the one in charge of the home. The date? 2 days after our wedding. He signed it without telling me. I folded the paper and slipped it into my bag. Rachel gave me a small nod. She got the whole thing on audio. I stood up. No yelling, no scene. I looked at Brian and said, "You didn't marry me, you hired me." Then I looked at Anita. "And you didn't want a daughter-in-law, you wanted a mirror." Then I walked out. That night, Brian left me a voicemail. I still have it saved. His voice was shaking, not crying, just shaky. "You could have tried. You promised you'd be different from the last one, but you're the same, cold, selfish. You turned her against me, my own mother. And I finally got it." He really believed it. He thought I betrayed him, not because I left, but because I didn't become Anita too. 2 weeks later, I thought everything was calming down. Rachel was wrapping up the annulment. Brian stopped emailing. Anita had gone quiet. I was starting to feel normal again. I could eat, sleep, smile for real. But they weren't done yet. One morning, my manager called me into her office. She said someone sent an anonymous tip saying I was using company time and tools to harass a grieving mother and run a personal revenge campaign. She showed me the email. It was full of dramatic claims, written like a legal report. It accused me of turning a family issue into fake abuse, and even hinted at fraud. But I recognized the tone. I knew who wrote it. It was Anita who sent that email. Rachel told me to stay calm. She said, "You've done everything right, you have proof, but if you want real closure, you need to say it to his face, just once." So I did something I didn't think I'd do. I asked for one last meeting, with both Brian and Anita. We met at a law office downtown. There were 2 lawyers, a mediator, and Rachel was with me. No one could yell, no one could lie, it was neutral ground. We sat across from each other at a shiny oak table. Anita looked like she was going to church. Brian looked nervous, his hands wouldn't stop shaking. I brought a folder with me. The mediator welcomed us, explained the rules, and started the meeting. I didn't speak at first. Then I pulled out 3 papers from my folder. The email Anita sent to my job. The bank transfers Brian made. The post-nuptial agreement I never signed. I placed them in front of Brian. He looked down, said nothing. Then I looked at Anita and asked, "Why did you do it? Why come after my job?" She smiled and said, "I had to. You were poisoning my son's mind. He's weak. He's not himself anymore." That's when Brian finally spoke. "Stop." She blinked. "Excuse me? Stop talking like that." The whole room went quiet. Brian stood up and looked at her. "You've ruined everything. I loved her, I still love her, but I chose you, over and over, and I don't even know why anymore." For the first time, Anita didn't look smug or angry, she looked scared. He kept going. "You told me she'd hurt me, that she'd leave, like Sarah did, but maybe they didn't leave me, maybe they left you, and I just let it happen. You raised me to depend on you, you said you'd cut me off if I didn't obey, and now, I don't even know how to be a man without your permission." Then he turned to me. "I'm sorry I was weak, you didn't deserve what I did." And I believed him. But it didn't change anything. Anita stood up, looked around like we were beneath her. Then she hissed, "You'll regret this," and walked out. No yelling, no dramatic ending, just the sound of her heels echoing down the hall. Brian sat down again and covered his face with his hands. No one said anything. Then the mediator asked quietly, "Would you like to continue, or take a break?" I said, "We're done here." And I walked out. Brian emailed me one more time after that. This time, it was a real apology. He said he started therapy. He said he cut his mom off. He said he moved out of her house and into a small apartment in a rough part of town. He said he was working nights, trying to figure out who he really was without her voice in his head. He didn't ask for another chance, he didn't beg. He just said, "You were the first person who told me I could be more than what she made me. I'm sorry I didn't listen when it mattered." I didn't reply. A few weeks later, Rachel and I were sitting on her balcony, drinking cheap wine and listening to the city at night. She said, "You weren't just his wife, you were his way out." I nodded. "But I wasn't a rescue mission, I'm a person." She clinked her glass against mine. "Exactly. Here's what I learned. Love isn't always enough, especially when the person you love is still stuck in someone else's shadow. You don't always win by fighting or yelling. Sometimes, you win by walking away, before you lose yourself completely." I left that house. I left that name. I left behind all the weight of someone else's expectations. And in the quiet that followed, I finally heard my own voice again. Calm, clear, free.